After the end of the Nigerian civil wars in the 1960s, Juju music generally saw increased patronage among patrons in the southwestern part of Nigeria. Now, don't forget, if you like this content, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell so that you can get notifications as new videos come out. We move. Thank you again for joining me in my music space. This is the second installment in the three-part series on the evolution of Juju music. In this episode, I would like to start by talking about one of my favorites, and it goes by the name of Chief Commander Ebenezer Obey. Born Ebenezer Remilekun Obey Fabiyi in 1942 to an Egbado family, he formed a band called International Brothers in 1964. My mom and dad were huge Ebenezer Obey fans, so growing up we had his records around the house. It was easy for me to fall in love with his smooth mid-tempo rhythms. After having joined and apprenticed in a band that had Julius Araba and Fatai Rolling Dollars in the early 1960s, Ebenezer Obey will go on to become a megastar in his own right after, of course, serving and learning under Fatai Rolling Dollars for 6 years. The Nigerian Civil War that took place between the year 1967 and 1970 saw the emigration of a lot of Igbo-born highlife musicians back to the east from the western part of Nigeria. And what that did is that it generally opened up the west for Juju music, and it saw increased patronage, especially from prominent club owners. Ebenezer Obey was an innovator. Alongside another Juju great, King Sunny Ade, they shaped what Juju music became in the late 60s, the early 70s, and into the 80s. They increased the number of guitars in their assemblage. Obey's use of Christian religious messages was legendary, and he was a skilled praise singer. He would change the name of his band to Inter-Reformers in the early 1970s and would go on to record numerous hits. Now, one of my favorite Ebenezer Obey albums was Board Members, released in 1972 under the Decca imprint. Board members, board members. Always staying true to his Miliki style, Obey's numerous hits include Ara Mi Eshik Pele Pele, The Horse, the Man and the Sun, Ekoila, Eniri Nkonhe, Igbo Wuro Lawa, just to mention a few. The history of Juju music can never be written without stating the contributions of people like Ebenezer Obey that helped to push Juju music internationally. Around the time of Obey's rise to fame, another Juju great was also on the rise, and it goes by the name of King Sunny Ade. Born Sunday Adeniyi Adegeye, King Sunny Ade had apprenticed under one of comedy greats, Moses Olaiya, also known as Baba Salah. Having left Baba Salah's band, first experimenting with highlife music before switching to Juju, he formed his own band called the Green Spots. His style was heavily influenced by the Owambe style of Tunde Nightingale. Now, King Sunny Ade was an innovator. He introduced the pedal steel guitar to Juju music. He was constantly thinking on how to innovate and improve his sound, so he introduced other instruments like synthesizers, the tenor guitar, and the clarinet. He also inculcated different repertoires like dubs and wah-wah guitars. His sound evolved in so many ways, like for example, his introduction of a phalanx of electric guitars that operated like a percussion section was so cool. He infused the rhythm and colors of rock and roll into his music. He was an entertainer. His dance moves were legendary. King Sunny Ade signed with Island Records after the death of Bob Marley, and this led to the release of the album titled Juju Music in 1982. This led to a Grammy nomination, and again he was nominated in 1988 after the release of the album Odu. King Sunny Ade's discography is huge. but I would like to mention a few. 1968 release of Awarawa, 1970s release of Edanre Tieleya, 1978 release of Ishujoba Loriyan, 1980s release of Omodi Omela, and of course 1982 release of Synchro System, just to mention a few. Now, King Sunny Ade helped in expanding the vista of Juju music. He helped in expanding it to the larger world, and most especially opening doors for other African acts to follow. So let me move on to another great I would like to talk about, and it goes by the name of Adawa superstar, Admiral Dele Abiodun. Dele Abiodun started music at a very young age. He formed his band in 1969 after returning from Ghana, where he studied at the Young Pioneer Music School. His band, Sweet Abbey and the Seven Brothers, played a blend of highlife, juju, and rock music. The following year, he created a new style he called Adawa. Now, Adawa in English is translated as independence, and also he went on to change the name of his band to Dele Abiodun and the Top Eaters. His musical development was greatly influenced by high-life greats like Victor Olaiya, Jim Rex Lawson, and of course Juju great Ike Dairo. He had great hits like Agbawabura, Adawa Super Sound, Abanije, and Asikoloto. Now, with King Sunny Ade and Ebenezer Obey ruling the Juju space, Admiral Dele Abiodun had to be innovative. Hence, his Juju high-life hybrid style. Next up is someone with great influence on later generation Juju superstars. He goes by the name of General Prince Adekunle. Prince Adekunle's innovation influenced what Juju music was in the late 70s and into the 80s. His Juju music was driven by a unique Afrobeat style. He borrowed from Juju music as played by Tunde King, with influence from Tunde Nightingale, Ebenezer Obey, and King Sunny Ade. He was able to evolve a forceful new Juju style that was heavily influenced by the Afrobeat pioneered by the late Fela Kuti. Now, Prince Adekunle formed the band that was called Prince Adekunle and the Western Brothers. This band will later change its name to General Prince Adekunle and his Supersonic Sound. His band will include a later superstar named Sashino Peters, who joined as a 10-year-old, Segun Adewale, and of course later Dayo Kujore. Prince Adekunle was quick to recognize and encourage young talents. His hit tracks include Awodinfo Ferere, Ayenreti Eleya, Aropin Teniyo, amongst others. Another Juju star of the 70s goes by the name Emperor Pick Peters. Now, born Peter Akane Akorede, Pick Peters, after losing his job at Pfizer in 1969, decided to take his final paycheck, buy musical instruments, and form his own band. He played regularly at a bar opposite Fela Kuti's shrine in the 1970s. Big Peters and his Sido system played a style that borrowed heavily from the prevalent Juju styles of the 70s. He would go on to join TYC Africa Songs after the exit of King Sunny Ade from the label. Perhaps this accounts for the perceived beef that followed. Now, this beef that would later involve the Admiral Dele Abiodun was started after King Sunny Ade released a track titled Ekilo Fomode. Ekilo Fomode, Now, everyone believed that this track was targeted at Pick Peters, who had earlier released a track titled Omode. Another person worthy of mention in this era is Expensive Olubi and his Golden Star Band. Now, Expensive Olubi also borrowed a lot from the prevailing Juju styles of that era. And then there was Awuja Bello, born Ismaila Dele Bello in 1942 in Isenyi, Oyo State, Nigeria. Awuja Bello came to Lagos in the early 1960s to learn radio and TV repairs. Now, after learning radio and TV repairs, he moved on to engineering for bands. He was at the time engineer for the band of Expensive Olubi and would later move on to join King Sunny Ade's band. Now, he got the name Awuja after joining King Sunny Ade's band. He had to set up the new vocal system they had just acquired. And after setting it up and testing, and everything sounded perfect, King Sunny Ade was so impressed and excited that he excitedly hailed him Awuja, and the name stuck. He went on tour of London with Expensive Olubi after leaving King Sunny Ade. And on his return to Nigeria, he formed his own band called Awuja Bello and the Golden Band. He was the superstar new kid on the block of Juju music from the late 70s into the early 80s. Some of his hits include Ariya Tide, Ijo Olomo, Victory, and Fellow Nigerians. Another artist of that era is YK Ajao, the originator of Juju Makusa. YK Ajao initially patterned his music after Ebenezer Obey, but would later change it. He grew up listening to IK Dairo, and this greatly influenced him to go into music. Another artist I would like to mention on the 70s is Kayode Fashola, who led the band The Music Makers. Now, they had great hits like Bi Pepeye Bajokuta, Roti Omeni Tio Ushe, amongst others. Also, another artist worth mentioning was Bob Aladeniyi, who initially played under Fatai Rolling Dollars in the mid-60s, but would later join King Sunny Ade's band in the late 60s. He left King Sunny Ade's band in 1976 and formed his own band called Bob Aladeniyi and the Juju Rockstars. He will join TYC African Songs and release such albums as Gbedu Gbedu, Lojuwon Lopesi, Awati Juba Funwon. Now, Bob Aladeniyi was a master guitarist. It is claimed that he is responsible for the reason why lead artists stand while singing with the band instead of sitting like they used to do in the early days of Juju music. Honorable mentions in that era include Brigadier Oluoni and his marathon system, as well as Uncle Toye Ajagun and his Olumo sound makers. So hope you enjoyed this episode, and like I earlier said, this is the second installment in the 3-part series on our journey into the evolution of Juju music. Now, thank you for watching this episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Hope you will join me again in my music space. Peace.